I call to order the Plan Commission meeting of February 28, 2017. We'll proceed with roll call.
Mr. Foster?
Here.
Mr. Holman?
Here.
Ms. Lazaris?
Here.
Mr. Mills?
Here.
Mr. Magnuson?
Here.
Mr. Schwark? Mr. Pearson?
Here.
Okay. Item number 3, correction and/or approval of the minutes of January 24, 2017. Are there any corrections to the minutes or any motions regarding the minutes?
Move to accept.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes. Any discussion? Okay. In that case, we'll take a roll call vote.
Mr. Holman?
Abstain.
Ms. Lazaris?
Aye.
Mr. Mills?
Aye.
Mr. Magnuson?
Abstain.
Mr. Pearson? Mr. Pearson?
Yeah, aye.
Okay.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Item number 4 is the questions and public comment. The public may address the commission at this time regarding items on the agenda unless the item is the subject of a public hearing. If your comments pertain to a public hearing, please hold your comments until a hearing. We do have one public hearing this evening. Item number 5, zoning ordinance amendment to revise regulations for breweries, distilleries, wineries, and brew pubs. Public comment may also be made at this time on items that are not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting. The state's open meeting law discourages action by the commission on items not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. State your name and address when starting your comments. Also fill out the sign-in sheet at the podium. Are there any public comments at this time? Okay, hearing none, we go on to item number 5, public hearing, section 10.222 and 10.224, zoning ordinance amendment to revise brewery, brew pub, distillery, and winery regulations. I will start we'll go over the motion that is in front of the Plan Commission. Plan Commissioners, before you do have motion 1721, which amends section 10.422 breweries to add manufacturers and rectifiers in wineries and creates section 10.424 brew pubs. Motion 1721 sets forth city zoning authority under Wisconsin state statutes, sets forth amendment request, the review by the city, and tonight's public hearing. This motion provides for A, that the Plan Commission is recommending to the City Council that it amend the code as it will be explained, and authorizes the signing of the motion. B, that this amendment is consistent with the intent of the zoning ordinance, which is Title 10, and C, the procedural provisions for the amendment set forth in Title 10 of the municipal code have been met. That's the motion that is before the Plan Commission this evening. To begin the public hearing, we would ask for our consulting planner, Mark Sawyer, and our consulting attorney, Mark Steichen, to do an overview of this these proposed amendments.
Yeah, so the proposed amendments before you, there's obviously the history of this coming originally before you back in December with some of the changes to the matrices in the zoning code. That was discussed back in January.
Could you use the mic, please?
So yeah, just recapping the changes that were done back in January to the matrices. The changes here are generally to clarify how the different types of alcohol manufacturers are regulated in the zoning code. For instance, brew pub is something that isn't currently regulated in the zoning code, so it's an attempt to clarify references to the statutes and just provide all information necessary so development can continue as desired. Generally speaking, these amendments reflect a couple things that Parking is going to be required for each of the use on a property. Restaurants will be allowable in breweries within industrial districts. The restaurant sizes will be restricted somewhat, generally allowing them in industrial districts. We realize that people that are visiting breweries, rectifiers, manufacturers may have a drink. They may also want to eat something, so it seems logical, but at the same time, the industrial park is a place of business, so we think there should be some constraint there. And then correct reference to off-site retail establishment for rectifiers. So the proposed code language changes you can see there runs all the way from A to E, and then it adds the brew pubs as section 10.4.24. A couple points of clarification that I passed out in the hard copy memo. It's slightly different. These changes are reflective of some comments that we've heard from the public, as well as general discussion amongst staff and you guys. So specifically on item D, number 1, you'll see there the blue language, which is underlined. So restaurants and breweries, I just wanted to specify that in industrial districts, the restaurants shall be limited to a maximum of 50%, et cetera, et cetera. The other one is item E, off-site retail premises. Off-site retail premises established by manufacturers of intoxicating liquors shall be licensed as outlined in statute 12551. Item E is actually going to move up to A, licensing, where we talk about licensing of other uses, brewery, manufacturer, and wineries. So it seems to make more sense that it's a little more consistent that way, to organize it that way, I should say.
And specifically, E would be eliminated, off-site retail premises, and the language of E1 would simply be renumbered as A4.
So I guess, yeah, that's a general overview of it. Staff is recommending approval to be recommended to Common Council. City Council.
I think maybe we should have some clarification. It's not in all industrial districts, it's just in the planned industrial, as the matrix laid out. Brewery is a permitted use, a restaurant is a conditional use in the planned industrial. That's still the same? Okay. And when we looked at the planned industrial, we anticipated that it was primarily a manufacturing zone, and so that's why we went with the percentage on the restaurant, was that we wanted to make sure that it was primarily a manufacturing type of operation rather than primarily commercial. We prefer to send our commercial to commercial units and that. Okay, so that's still consistent. Thank you.
All right, anything further from staff as an overview?
You have anything, Mark?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay. All right, very well. The public hearing is open. At this time, those who would like to make comments concerning the proposed amendments, then please step up to the lectern, writing down your name and address, and also stating your name and address for the record. Would anyone like to make public comments at this time?
Good evening. My name is Dan Drescher. I'm an attorney. I'm representing Tyranny Brewing Company. My office is located at 140 East Lake Street here in Lake Mills. Thank you for having me. Okay, I haven't seen the hard copy of the proposed change, but what was stated is in line with what Tyranny's desire is. I do have one further question regarding the the heading on item D under 10422 and the proposed change. Now, does that change just apply to breweries as it's stated in the language of that heading, or does that apply to rectifiers, wineries, and breweries as well? Then the second issue, I think that if that is limited, the restaurant use of breweries in industrial areas, that's in line with Tyrannina's goal here tonight. I guess our fear was that that would be applied to a potential use of a restaurant in a commercial area that has an ancillary brewery on it. We wouldn't want a limitation on space in such commercial area because the primary use would be that of restaurant, and it wouldn't quite make sense. We appreciate the fact that that is actually expanded from the previous ordinance, which limited to 30% of the space being used for a restaurant on-site breweries. So I think that really does clear it up. If in fact it is only applied to a brewery that has a restaurant in industrial zoned areas. Regarding the movement of that same sub E up into, I guess I'm not really clear, that off-site retail is being applied to not just breweries, but it's being applied to rectifiers, wineries, and breweries as well, and we're moving that subheading to where?
It would be moved to A4, but the
Okay.
language is off-site retail premises established by manufacturers of intoxicating liquors.
Okay, so it's limited to that manufacturer of intoxicating liquor. Okay, that is completely in line with what our desired effect is. So Tyrannina doesn't currently have an objection to the language that has been proposed in the amended version. We haven't seen that hard copy, but it appears to be in line with what our desired effect is. The remaining question that I have is
Can I ask a question, Dan?
Yes, sir.
You really wanted to make sure that we follow the state statutes as required in 125. It's not necessarily that Rob wants to eliminate the option for distilleries and wineries to,
absolutely correct.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if that's in line with 125,
That's what it says right in there. It says in line with 125.
okay. That in addition to the new limitation on the size of a restaurant that is with a brewery being limited to industrial zoning, completely, it's in line with what our desired effect is. So I think we're satisfied there. The only other issue that I really have here is that the heading that states it, you kind of jumble into manufacturers as rectifiers, wineries, and breweries. And I think as it's stated now, that if it's in A4 and it only applies to manufacturers of intoxicating liquors, and there is no applicability to breweries specific who are making fermented malt beverages, then we're fine. I don't think that there's an issue there. So with the proposed language, the change in the ordinance that was discussed this evening, I think we're in line with what Tyrannina's desired effect is. I haven't had a chance to review that language, but based on what was stated tonight, I think that it's exactly what we want. So that's my comment. Yep.
This is a recommendation to the city council, and so it'll be on the agenda, and you can read the final. That's really when you want to read it.
Very good. So,
And if I could just interject, Mr. Drescher and I had a phone call yesterday, I think it was, about some language, and there was one other area that you had asked about, and that is in subsection D1, where we're talking about restaurants and the maximum size of the restaurant, and there's an exclusion, and the exclusion, it says excluding the area devoted to the tap room, any outdoor seating area or accessory retail sales area, and we had some discussion about whether or not that might be ambiguous. And so what I am proposing is to, in place of the word accessory retail sales area, to substitute the language areas for retail sales of items other than intoxicating beverages. Because what we're trying to address there are, there can be areas where T-shirts and beer mugs and that sort of thing can be sold, and it's not intended that that be part of the comparison. What we're really trying to compare to is the size of the restaurant to essentially the manufacturing operations for the brewery.
And I think that point, well, the change in the language is well appreciated. I think that's effective. That point is made clearer in the actual memorandum rather than in the ordinance itself. So if that's cleared up, we're fine. The fact that that only applies to a brewery that's located in industrial areas is exactly what we want. What the fear would be is that you open up a satellite brewing facility that has a restaurant in a commercial area. The satellite brewing facility itself is very, very small because the restaurant is the primary use, and then you're required to have floor space of less than 50% of the entire building that is devoted to restaurant in that situation, when a brewery may only be 10 by 10 in that certain area. And we wouldn't want a limitation on the ability to have a restaurant, which is a permitted use in such an area, a commercial area. That limitation wouldn't necessarily make sense. It certainly makes sense in an industrial area based on the previous code and what the effect here is. So based on the comments tonight with regard to the proposed change to the proposed language, I think that we're very much in line with what our desired effect is. So thank you very much.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Drescher. We're still in public hearing. Are there further public comments regarding these proposed amendments? If no one approaches the lectern, I'm going to close the hearing. Are there any further comments concerning these proposed amendments? All right, hearing none, we go on to item number 6. Discussion decision on section 10.222 and 10.224 zoning ordinance amendment to revise brewery, brewpub, distillery, and winery regulations. All right, we're in discussion. So plan commissioners and staff, do you have any comments concerning these proposed revisions?
I just have one question. Well, it's really not a question. It's about the wording in here. On 10/4/2022, on the main title we have breweries, manufacturers and rectifiers, and wineries. But then you go down a little further, and item D, it just says breweries, rectifiers, or wineries. Would we want to have manufacturer in there to keep the titles sort of the same, manufacturers and rectifiers in there?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, he's right.
Incidentally, manufacturers and rectifiers is the statutory term that's used for distilleries.
That's the only question I had on it.
Yeah, that's a good catch. Yeah, you're right about that. Plan commissioners and staff, are there any other observations or questions, comments on the proposed amendments?
No.
None.
Okay. In that case, I'd entertain a motion on the amendments as amended by Mr. Foster and by Mr. Steichen with the qualification as to the retail sales area.
I will make that motion to approve as amended.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? In that case, I'll proceed with the roll call vote.
Ms. Lazaris?
Aye.
Mr. Mills?
Aye.
Mr. Magnuson?
Aye.
Mr. Pearson?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0.
All right. All right, the next is item number 7, discussion on accessory buildings zoning. Mr. Holman, this was an item that you had requested, and so we'll hear from you.
Yeah, I apologize for not being prepared for this, but I'd like to revisit. The zoning code in regard to this accessory building issue. When we passed the zoning code, we had some pretty serious debate on where garages could be located, and I guess I showed some extreme displeasure with the city council after they took this issue up. I wasn't watching, and I did not attend the meeting, and it was I think it was dragged through the mud, not what my intentions were when we discussed this, and I let them know that and said we'd like to revisit it. And anyway, I guess as far as how we handle that is we need to bring it back up here, and I'll be prepared. I have some examples in the city of where this might affect property owners, and then we can just kind of rediscuss it and see if it can pass this body again, and then send it back to council. Thanks.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, in that case, we'll maintain it on the agenda. Okay. All right, in that case, we go on to item number 8, recommendations for future agendas. Are there items coming up that are known at this time?
We have 2 conditional uses coming up. It'll be Lane Smith's Brewery, Ublin, and then another conditional use permit for a commercial use in a residential zone near Bartles Beach. So those 2 will be before us at the next meeting.
All right, very good. Anything further concerning recommendations for future agendas? Okay, with that, we are on to item number 9, adjournment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any complaint about the motion in the second? In that case, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.